my perspective comes from a religious lens, so which would be very different to the lens by which many people might approach this, right? A non-religious or secular approach. So the but religions are made up of people, and people who live together or want to live together. I think that's a common thing. So beside the religion, I just need to root it in where that starts. So within Islamic um, theology, there is a concept of a movable or immovable thing that is dedicated to the use of everyone is dedicated to God, right? So someone would in the past would establish what's called a waqf or a trust. Basically, it's a trust. Regularly, these have been lands. Sometimes they're movable objects, right? Like religious things. Um, just like churches have always existed, more or less, so even from the beginning, and the lands on which they stand are dedicated to that, dedicated to religion. In many places across the world, the spaces in which religious buildings can be built and religious activities be conducted are they're zoned differently and at times taxed differently. So that's where the rooting of our particular project in Ontario is rooted in a parcel of property that no one owns that is dedicated for God's use. Um, Within for people who may understand or have a concept around Kwanzaa, the whole concept of Ujama, coming together for a collective economics. That's how Ujama is translated really, but it comes from the word Jama, means to be together. So a grouping of people. So we have a religious grouping of people coming together to establish property where what can be done. The idea behind this our particular project in Ontario is not unique, neither is it new. For Muslims in North America to buy property in which to live, teach their children, have a healthy lifestyle, etc. This was started way back in the 1930s in the United States of America, and I'm not sure what happened with post the experience of slavery, but in the 1930s there was a large parcel of land bought. I would say Syracuse, but far north in New York, where where a group of Muslims came together to buy property with on which to live. People owned the homes that they lived in, but the land was owned by the trust in which it sat. What it does really is to create an environment where, and most of the time these properties are rural, um, and regularly in huge in like Ontario is big. I drove to Saskatchewan a few years back, and it took me 2 days to drive out of Ontario, driving at 100 kilometers an hour, right? So it's a huge place with lots of land, which is quite the different scenario for Barbados, which has a smaller land mass and a higher population density. So the competition for vacant lands, available lands, better lands, more beautiful lands is quite different to the experience that we've had here in our particular project in Ontario. However, while purchasing property, our experience is that we are not immune from the changes in the wider governance of the communities in which the properties are purchased. Our particular property had an amalgamation of counties, changing laws, changing expectation around residences, etc. It could be initially when the property was bought, any amount of homes can fit on the land. So, but this was hundreds of acres of property, right? But then things change. There was an expectation of a limited amount of properties can be placed on land. And then there's an issue of okay, no more than subdivision. So the gradual changes in law around the land that was purchased has our community constantly shifting perspective, shifting objectives, and shifting possibilities. So that's one of the things that people need to be aware of. Like, where does the law stand in regards to community um, community purchase of land? What about building codes and that kind of thing? If you're building homes and that, Peter's comment on having a land trust that is based on ecology, fine, but how is that property protected from a change of law? While we might say, well, the property can't be bought and sold, you have at least 99 years, what does the wider county, the wider state, the wider country that the land is situated in, what happens when the laws that impact on land ownership, land occupancy changes? However, I want to speak to also what this does for the people that are part of those projects, right? A sense of independence, a sense of like there's a greater, like you're not investing. Danny spoke of, housing where 30% of your income is spent on housing, right? Like we have a crisis in many Canadian cities where housing is almost unaffordable, right? And that's rental housing. So owning your own property, being a partial, owner, where the cost of ownership is what is much less per square foot as in Barbados, where you can be part of a community that might build up rather than build out, like the independence that it gives you or the financial stability or the financial power that it gives you is significant. But one of the things I do need to cite is the group of people that are coming together. Like, what's holding you together as a community, right? Like, what is making, what are you committed to? Do you go this far and no further? What is the common glue that holds you together as a community that would say, well, we all agree to this, and how do you get that buy-in from a group, sometimes of the separate people? How does that group of people come together to say, well, this is what we want to establish. This is the contract that we will abide by, and this is how I am in, how, do I have a way out of this, and all those things need to be discussed before any group of people can come together to purchase property. So all in all, in a nutshell, like, our experience has been exciting, challenging, ejecting, euphoric, so all of those kind of feelings has happened in the life of this project. But it's been 30 years. The property is still ongoing. The project is still ongoing. People have been born, raised, married, and parented on a property over 30 years. So it's there. And despite the challenges, but the sense that one has when, people talk about, owning a piece of the rock, for many people living in the diaspora to have that as a real thing is something to see. And I witnessed it in my own family. My daughter, being born in Canada, I remember taking a drive with her to St. George, a beautiful place in St. George, and she's saying, well, like, Abu, what do you think about this? I'd like to buy a piece of property here. And her plans to do that. That didn't happen, St. George. However, something else happened. So she was able to purchase a small piece of property that she's about to develop. But what it did for her, as a young girl that visited Barbados when she was 8 years old and fell in love and did so many things after that to be a grown woman with enough money to buy a land, doing that, it was significant for her. And what it does for her as an individual, as the daughter of a Bajan and a Bajan herself with a passport now, it's tremendous. And I think that all of our children that are living outside of Barbados, and those of those of you who might have been born outside of Barbados but are Bajan, owning property in Barbados is significant. And I think that this is a real big opportunity for that to happen. And people should work really hard to make that happen. Thank you.